What's up, y'all? I'm about to share with you 3 important details about open houses that you may have not considered before. And note, one of them is actually quite sinister, and you should know about them so that every time you see that open house sign, you know what the reality of that open house actually is. But before we get into those topics, let me just quickly take a preface and say 2 things. 1, my buddy Graham Stephan has launched a real estate investing live event for October 27th, 2018. Check link number 1 in the description to find out more details for that. And if you can't make it for that, definitely make sure to check out link number 2 for the ultimate guide to real estate investing. Have you ever wondered why there are so many open house signs on a Sunday afternoon? Sometimes you even see them on a Saturday afternoon, and heck, the odd weekday you see them as well. Why is that? Does it actually help the seller sell a house? Or is there a more sinister reason for holding an open house? And do you know what that is? So let's start with this. How often have you heard a seller say, oh my gosh, we had 60 people through this open house and we got 3 offers right after that, and we're just jazzed. Open houses are amazing. They're the best thing in the world. If you don't have an open house, then you're not gonna be able to sell your place because bam, I experienced open house juju magic. I don't even know if those 2 words go together, but let's just go with it. And let's use that as a conduit for you're being lied to about the purpose of open houses. First, the very most important thing to know about open houses is that today, 2018, is very different than the real estate world was in, say, 1988. Back in 1988, when a buyer wanted to find out what listings were available for sale on what was known as the multiple listing service, buyers would have to approach a real estate agent, oftentimes sign a contract with that real estate agent, whether or not that agent actually finds that property on behalf of the buyer or the buyer finds it themselves. But the agents had control of this MLS database via a relatively large book that was generally printed once every 2 weeks. This was the 80s. Welcome to the MLS book. Thus, with this 2-week lag time, came the development of the open house and the for sale sign. Folks, open houses started as an excellent way before sellers became savvy for buyers to realize that, wow, I can shop for available housing inventory before it updates in the MLS booklets, before all of the realtors know about this particular house that's coming up, and shop for it and view it. But the point is, the world today is extremely different. In 2018, we can install apps on our smartwatches, such as Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com, and we can be buzzed on our wrist as soon as a new property hits the market. As soon as a property hits the market, myself, even as a real estate broker, I look at my wrist and go, ooh, that's a good one. And the very next thing I do is I go to my smartphone and open up the multiple listing service, get showing details, vacancy information, whatever I can find out about that property to see, is this a good deal? Do I need to jump and get over there to sell that property? 1988 and 2018 are so incredibly different that it's not just a matter of 30 years. It's a matter of a completely different society that we live in today that has effectively transformed what the purpose of an actual open house is. AKA, it's not to sell the house. So let's get into the problems of open houses and expose what open houses really are. First and foremost, in 2018, open houses create a false sense of activity for a seller, which can manipulate a seller into believing that their house is actually much more popular than it really is. This is oftentimes due to people who are simply bored on a Saturday or Sunday, driving, seeing a sign, and deciding, you know what, hey, let's just go look at some houses. Hey, maybe we'll get some design ideas, we'll take some pictures, or you know what, maybe we're thinking about buying next year, or something completely unrelated to this specific property. Because after all, the goal of the seller is not to sell next year, in 3 months, or in 6 months. It's to sell now. So, but Kevin, isn't there a chance that a qualified buyer will come through the open house? Well, yeah, of course there's a chance, but here's the thing. Qualified buyers, that is, buyers who have their pre-approval letter and buyers who are either currently writing offers and possibly missing out on other transactions, other deals because of multiple offers, or buyers who are just finishing their pre-approval process and will be ready to make an offer within the next 2 weeks, will view a house in spite of an open house. That is, whether or not there is an open house has no bearing on whether or not these qualified buyers will actually come to view a property for sale. The reason for that is, in today's day and age, because everybody has either a smartwatch or a smartphone or even simply an email list, no buyer wants to miss a good opportunity that hits the market. As a result, any opportunity that hits the market within a buyer's criteria is very quickly visited by individual buyers, either by setting up a showing directly with their real estate agent that they've contracted, or by calling the listing agent directly to set up a showing. This is much faster and much more reliable than waiting for a Sunday possible open house and scurrying through the streets of neighborhoods in hopes of finding a house that's for sale. Reliability and speed are of utmost importance in today's society that is constantly pressed for time. As a result, you get buyers who very quickly make offers on properties when properties first hit the market. That's thanks to the internet. There's an old adage that says, "Oh, don't take the first offer, wait for other offers." Well, unfortunately, in real estate today, thanks to the power of the internet and again, smartphones, email lists, and smartwatches, the first offer can oftentimes be the most motivated offer, and to have multiple offers at the beginning of a listing period is much more impactful than having multiple offers 2 or even 3 weeks into a property being on the market. So let me clarify this. The people who generally go to open houses are neighbors and future buyers, people looking to get ideas, or worse, your competition, future sellers. But qualified buyers may go to your open house because maybe it's convenient, but even if there is no open house, they will go visit the property by setting up a showing in spite of the open house. However, owners' insistence today on having open houses frequently shoots them in the foot because the first weekend is the best way for an owner to judge the activity on their house. And as I mentioned, the worst thing is to have a false sense of successful activity on a house because a busy open house happened on a weekend. Now, of course, there are caveats to this. A house has to be professionally marketed. If a house has no pictures or just one picture of the outside, the odds are, even if there's an open house, the open house is going to be slow and private showing traffic will be slow. So there are a lot of factors that can definitely ensure that the marketing is correct to make sure the house is positioned in the best possible way to guarantee the most possible showings. However, and unfortunately, an open house can be detrimental to a seller actually selling the property for the correct price and reacting quickly. Because after all, the most detrimental factor in real estate for a seller is days on the market. In addition to creating a false sense of activity for a seller, open houses generally lead to more activity than you really need through a house. That is, do you really want children and a bunch of people with possibly dirty shoes or dirty hands touching your door moldings, messing up your carpet, moving your staging decor, sitting or jumping on your couches? Oh, and note too, this is why often very high-end homes don't even hold open houses, because they don't want anybody in the house that isn't qualified. This isn't to say that agents don't have success with open houses. Number one, it makes the seller feel like the agent is working hard for the seller to get a property sold. Unfortunately, if an agent is holding open houses for a property and it's past day 10, the odds are the property's simply overpriced, and the reality is the only reason the agent is holding the open house is to hopefully gather feedback to go back to the seller and say, "See, I told you so, the house is overpriced, we need to drop the price because everybody at the open house I asked just happens to say that the house is overpriced." The real reason that real estate agents hold open houses is to meet clients. As I mentioned earlier, the people who come through open houses are neighbors, future buyers, and future sellers. And guess what? Neighbors, future buyers, and future sellers don't generally have a real estate agent. Therefore, the open house is almost like the ultimate job interview. For a real estate agent, which, by the way, I highly encourage open houses for real estate agents. I just don't encourage them for sellers because they don't benefit the seller. But hey, if a seller wants it, great, it's an opportunity for an agent. For real estate agents, open houses are like shooting fish in a barrel. You have real estate buyers, real estate sellers, real estate investors, and neighbors coming to you. These are people who have an interest in real estate, and it is the best opportunity to guarantee that your message is being disseminated amongst people who are actually interested in the real estate community. Now look, circling back to the beginning, you may have heard those stories before of, well, I had 60 people come through my open house and I got 3 offers the next day. Yep, and there are often reasons for this. When open houses are held on the first weekend, they generally coincide with when people would be conducting private showings anyway. That is, if there weren't an open house, agents would be showing the property in spite of the open house. If there happens to be an open house, then it's a convenient time for people who have already pre-qualified the property online and decided this is an interesting property thanks again to smartphones and smartwatches, then it is just another convenient way to say, wow, I have a 3-hour window to go look at this house. I don't have to set up an appointment and be right there, Johnny on the spot. Instead, I can let my day flow and go look at the house anytime during this time frame. So the number one reason you'd still see offers when you have an open house weekend first weekend is because it's the first weekend. And that is the first opportunity people are generally having to get out to see the house anyway. The second reason might be because maybe the listing agent put the property on the market on, say, a Monday, but it said nobody's allowed to see it and we're not putting a lockbox on until the first open house. That, unfortunately, to me, is usually a little bit of a shady tactic for the listing agent to try to double end the transaction. And usually this method is sold to the seller under the guise of, well, hey, if I double end the deal, you'll save on commission because I'll give you a little bit of a discount. Now, if you're still not certain that I've fully exposed open houses, let me ask you one last thing as sort of a takeaway challenge. Why do you think real estate agents will hold open houses for somebody else's listing? That is, for example, let's say Fred at Remax has a house that's vacant and he doesn't want to hold the open house on Sunday. I call up Fred. Hey Fred, you mind if I hold your house open this weekend on Sunday? I'd love to find you a buyer. Fred, 99% of the time, will reply with, Kevin, that's awesome. Yeah, totally. Just send me some feedback. Let me know how it goes. I hope you sell it, even though you probably won't. My goal then is to set up all my signage. I get my marketing out in that region of where the house is, and guess who I get to meet? Neighbors, future sellers, and future buyers. Am I really trying to sell that house? Sure, it'd be convenient, but is that likely to happen? Not at all. In fact, the National Association of Realtors says that the odds of selling a house at an open house are only 3%. And that doesn't even adjust for the fact that the open house may have just coincided with when buyers had the first opportunity to look at the house privately anyway. In fact, to just leave off with one little nail in the coffin when it comes to exposing open houses, as a listing broker, I much prefer private showings over open houses anyway, because when multiple buyers are at a property, buyers generally don't speak freely to their buyer's agent about their thoughts and opinions of the house. So generally they're much more guarded. They put their collars up and they walk around and look around, and they can't really acquaint with the house because there are a bunch of other people there. As a result, when the agents and the buyers leave, the buyers usually just say, I don't know, it wasn't for me. Contrast this with a private showing. During a private showing, buyers might say to their agent, wow, I can't believe they put the couch here. This is so in the way. This is really inconvenient. Or, oh my gosh, this is a tacky paint color. And when all this sincere feedback comes out to the agent, the listing agent can now reach out to that secondary buyer's agent and say, hey, how'd your showing go? Like, what feedback did you get? Dude, they hated how you guys placed that sofa. And guess what I could do then? I can now go to my sellers. I can provide value to my sellers. I could benefit the sellers. And the sellers could ultimately, hopefully, sell the property faster and for more money by responding with, oh my gosh, Kevin, we'll move that couch right now. And so there you have it. Hope you enjoyed exposing the open houses.